every Janmashtami we celebrate the appearance of Lord Krishna. And so often on that day, there's a drama, usually a children's drama. Do you do that here too? Sometimes. And in that drama, we did that for so many years when we were in Gita Nagari and even before that in Hong Kong. And I always remember Vasudeva on the chariot with his newly wedded wife, whose name is... something seems to be lacking.
Start with D.
Yeah, very, very good. So he's sitting with his newly wedded wife, whose name starts with D, and also on the throne is Mr. K. And on the throne, on the chariot. And suddenly there's what's called an Akashvani, which means a voice, a sound that is unembodied, coming from the sky. And the way we always would say it in English is, "Kamsa, you are such a fool," who would begin like that. Now, I've never seen those dramas speak about the prayers of the demigods to Krishna. Garbhastuti is called, the prayers to Krishna while he's still in the womb. And although I have read it so many times in the Krishna book and in the Bhagavatam, I never really understood it very well, and probably some of you may never have understood these prayers very well either. But they are so wonderful, actually. And it is almost as if just before the appearance of Krishna, when we say appearance of Krishna, we mean before he manifests his presence in this world, just before that, the devatas, the demigods, want to prepare us and tell us the significance, the importance of what's about to occur. And they're going to give us some final instructions. And does anyone know what I named my presentation for this retreat? Yes. Yes, thank you. Prescription for transcendence. That is what they give us. If you want to have the transcendental experience of elevating yourself and making yourself qualified to actually be with Krishna, the demigods are going to explain how to do that. And I've divided their so many prayers, I can't remember right now, but it goes from 28 to 40 basically, or 26 to 40. How many is that?
56 or 58. Oh, no,
60. You were thinking of something else. Which is usually the problem. While we're doing devotional activities, we're thinking of something else. It's usually the problem. And of course, the devotional activities are so powerful, but still we won't get the full effect unless we focus. We won't have the depth of transformation that we're longing for. So in any case, we're going to speak about these prayers in 3 different presentations, 3 different sections. Now before we begin, I would like to, if you could just divide yourselves up very, very quickly into 4 groups of 4, and don't worry, it's not going to be different political parties, just into groups of 4, and begin discussing what you remember from all the things in the Bhagavatam that happened before the prayers of the demigods to Krishna in the womb. You have 8 minutes. Begin. 4, just haphazardly almost. You too, Mayagila. 6, 2, 4, 6, it's okay. But just so you can begin speaking about it. Now, making sure that you raise your hand before calling out. Tell me the first thing that happens that you remember from the 10th, beginning of the 10th canto. Because the prayers of the demigods go on in the 2nd chapter, so it's not very much. But what's the first thing? Yes?
I think Bhumi Devi, she goes to Lord Brahma and she complains about the burden on the earth.
Yeah, so there's so much suffering. And this really, in one sense, is what the material world is about. Now, I don't want to give the kind of class that we just talk about how bad the material world is, especially for young people, because young people especially have to have a hope to move forward and to do something in life. Now, we all know that the hope is going to eventually be smashed by having to leave this world, and it's so we hear so many classes about that dukkhalayam, shashvatam, and nityasukhamloka. So I don't want to focus on this, but yet the demigods are even they're demigods. They have such subtle consciousness, more subtle than our consciousness. They're seeking protection all the time. And I can't remember exactly where I heard it in something that Prabhupada was speaking, but he was explaining that the material world, there is always pinching. Gopal, you can pinch, just to show, give an experiment, you can pinch. See, he doesn't want to be pinched. No one wants to be pinched. But the material world is constant pinching. Or not constant, but this pinching. According to our fate individually, we're getting pinched more or less, but no one escapes getting pinched. And Prabhupada explained in this talk that there's a purpose to this. Krishna is actually behind that, because he wants us to know that we can't be comfortable here, and this place actually isn't our home. And that we actually do have a home. And that we should desire and aspire and desire to go to that home. So there's a purpose behind it. Even the devatas are pinched by the asuras continuously. The Bhagavatam describes it so many times. Now, here we are in our life, and we're living our life. Okay, settle down. Sit down. Would you like to sit down? Okay. You have to give... What's your name again? I forgot.
Krishna.
How can I forget Krishna? This is my promise. If you take off your coat, you'll probably be more comfortable, because it's getting warm. Which reminds me that maybe we should open up some windows. Yes. So, the demigods, the devatas, do you know that they're actually aware of what we're doing? Now, there's one little video, I'll tell you about it, that these little ants, does anyone have an ant farm? Did you have one at one time? No. But when they take these little ants, of course little ants, and they put them in two pieces of plastic, and they put some earth in there, and the ants go about their business. And you know what you're doing when you're a kid generally, although of course adults now do these and they make very complicated and sophisticated ones. They watch the ants build their tunnels and their nests and things like that. All this is going on under the ground. But there you are watching them. But do the ants know anything other than their tunnels and their nests? No. They're just digging away and combining them and moving this way and moving that way, and they're working so hard. And you're watching them with a completely different consciousness than they have. And they're going about their life thinking that this is everything based on the particular consciousness that they have. So similarly, we are like little ants. And we're moving about our life, and this is very, very important, and I'm doing this now, and I'm doing that, and I have to catch this bus, and I have to do that. But from the point of view of the devatas, what we're doing is quite insignificant, just like from the point of view of the boy watching his ant farm. The movement of the ants, it doesn't really mean very much. It's entertaining perhaps, but it's not really very significant at all. So similarly, if you're not going to be able to pay attention, you two boys, we're going to put you, where are we going to put you? We'll think of some really good place to put you, perhaps on the roof. And so it's like that. So we shouldn't think that our consciousness and what we perceive is everything. That's the basic point. We're just little pieces in this great puzzle of material existence, of ultimately of reality, of ultimately Krishna's part and parcel. And we take it, everything as so significant. But when we look at the significance of it, the importance of it, from the point of view of eternity, it's the actual perspective that's more accurate, that it's not even worth a blink of the eye. Okay, who remembers something else? What happens next? After the devatas and then Krishna, they pray by the ocean of milk to who prays? Lord Brahma prays, and then he hears a voice, or rather in meditation the Lord talks to him and says, I will come, and all the devatas should take their birth in the Yadu dynasty, in the cowherd families. I'm going to come, and I'm going to protect you. I'm going to protect you. And then the next scene, the curtain closes, then the curtain opens again, and Vasudeva and Devaki on the chariot with Vasudeva and Vasudeva. Very good, very good. And Kamsa is driving the chariot, and he's actually very happy because he had affection for his sister. Wasn't actually his sister, but in the broader family relationship, because the son of Surasena and the son of Ugrasena, they were brothers. So Devaki was Kamsa's cousin. So they're driving the chariot, and he's so happy because of his affection for Devaki. And suddenly that Akashvani occurs, that unembodied voice comes and says that Kamsa, the Astama Garbha, the 8th Garbha, means either a son or a person or the womb or the embryo in the womb. You're such a foolish person that the person who you're driving the chariot so joyously, her 8th child, is going to be the cause of your death. So Kamsa, who's in a previous joyous mood, he drops the reins of the horses, that he was driving the chariot out of his affection, and he dropped the horses, grabbed Devaki with her hand, pulled out his sword, and was about to kill her. From affection to murder her on this auspicious occasion in the blink of an eye. So this is actually the asura bhav. And this is the mood or the mode of a demonic person. We could say that in a simple way, Krishna Bhule Se Jivanadi Varamukha, a demonic person who has taken, he's turned his back on Krishna. And when one turns his back on Krishna, one gets a false ego, a false sense of who he is. And who is the center for such a person? It's himself. And then, and I see this, unfortunately, I see this in myself, in one moment, my mind can also flip and change. And we'll talk about that in the third class, in the third presentation. But it can change in just a moment. And suddenly, when I see something that really disturbs me, so much anger comes. 1 second, one thing, and then boom! The next second, complete shift. The internal steadiness born of us acting as we actually are, who we actually are, in relationship to Krishna, as a servant, that's constitutionally who we are. Unless we're situated in that, our minds are going to flip this way and that way and this way and that way as we imagine, again, something that's going to make us happy. Imagine something that's going to make us happy. Fulfill the basic emptiness in the heart. So Vasudeva begins to think very, very quickly at that point. And when you're talking to someone who has who is basically selfish, that's what it means to be in the material world, as one old elderly devotee in Bengali devotee in Vrindavan used to say, now he's passed away, but he used to say, I'm the worst kind of fish, a selfish. And everyone has to wear that title, a selfish, self-centered, in the material world. That's what it means to have a false ego and to have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. So when Vasudeva started talking to Kamsa, he began speaking from the point of view of what's good for you, Kamsa. You should do what's good for you, you selfish old rat. He didn't say that because it would be very dangerous to say that. But he said, he explained about transmigration of the soul, and he explained how we take our next birth based on how we act in this life. And then Kamsa wasn't convinced at all that he should do anything but kill Devaki. And then he explained, because he was afraid, and he was so powerful, and yet he was afraid. He was so powerful, and yet he was afraid. This is the essential experience of someone in this world. Either you're afraid or an illusion, just with your eyes closed, like a rabbit being chased by a tiger. He just closes his eyes when it becomes frightening. So. And then, of course, nowadays people don't just close their eyes, but instead they just get on their mobile phones and just spend all the time playing imaginary games as if something is really going on. So Vasudeva told Kamsa, here's a way that you can get your needs met. And he was thinking, and Devaki will be spared. It won't be good for your reputation if you, her brother, kills this innocent girl on the auspicious time of her marriage. This will not look very good for you. But you're afraid, legitimately, of the 8th child, so don't kill her, but we'll give you each of the children. And then you can do with them as you like. You can kill them if you like. So you don't have to worry about Devaki. So Kamsa was convinced, because he didn't want to lose his reputation, and he didn't want to lose his life either, and this solution would solve both those problems. So he then went back to his house, and then something very peculiar happens. Because that's almost in one sense a very happy ending. But then what happens next? Who remembers? Who else remembers? Let's see. See, raise your hand if you remember what happens next. I see a little hand raised back there. Yes, do you know what happens next? Do you know?
This is a half speculation.
Oh, well, no, you're a big hand. Let's wait 1 second. Let's wait 1 second. There's a little one right in front of Jagatrini. Do you remember what happens next?
Yes.
What?
Kamsa looked up David and Vasudeva in the prison.
That's soon. Very good. But not quite yet. Something happens in between. Huh? Narad Muni comes. And he says, Kamsa, you're such a fool. Don't you know that your enemies, the Devatas, they're all taking birth around you? He met him in a garden outside of Mathura. He didn't go into the city. You're so foolish, Kamsa. He didn't say that. So, why in the world would Narada Muni do this? And the answer is Narada Muni has a different vision than we do. And he wanted to increase Kamsa's sinfulness. He wanted to speed up the advent of Krishna. His viewpoint, again, was not from the viewpoint of the temporary. And he knew what was going to happen very soon. And he wanted Kamsa to be Khatam ho gaya. So Kamsa started killing the children of Devaki as they were born. Now, your point. He was put in prison. He put Vasudeva and Devaki in prison. And year after year he killed the children, one after the next, 6 children. And there's something very important we could say about that, but I'm already taking the introduction much too long. So I won't talk about that. But there's so in the details, there's such sweetness. And we think we know all the stories already, like you read Amrita Chitta Katha comic books or something like that. And you think you know what's going on, but you don't really know what's going on at all, because there's so much depth, there's so much sweetness. So, then Krishna tells Yogamaya to bring Balaram to transfer the 7th child from Devaki's womb to Rohini's womb, and then, because Balaram has Krishna's Sandini Shakti, this is the potency of the Dham. So then Devaki's womb has the potency of the Dham invested in it, Balaram. And then he goes to his eternal mother Rohini. And then Krishna enters the mind of Vasudeva and then transferred to the womb of Devaki. And she begins to practically glow effulgently and looking so beautiful that Kamsa notices and understands that she must be carrying the Lord within her. She's so beautiful, so effulgent, so appealing. She must be carrying the Lord within her. And he again thinks, should I kill her now? And he thinks, no need, that will be it to kill a pregnant lady. This would be terrible for my reputation, and people will write about it on my Facebook page. I want that to happen, and it will go viral, and then I'll really be in trouble. So then he said, no, let's just kill the child when he comes out. So the demigods who had prayed all this time for the Lord to come, so long ago, because Kamsa was ferocious, He was so powerful. And the demigods were fearful of him, as well as many of the other asuras. So they came to welcome Krishna, who was in the womb of Devaki. And they welcomed the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was going to come with these prayers that are very instructive for us too. Now, the first 1, 2, 3, 26 to 29. How many is 26 to 29? How many prayers is that?
Very good.
How many is 26 to 29?
3.
Okay, try it on your fingers, since you don't have your mobile phone with you. 26, 27, 28, 29. How many prayers?
4.
Very good, very good, very good. So in these 4 prayers, the first thing that they're going to establish is that this child in the womb is not an ordinary child in the womb. Even though ordinary children appear in the womb, but he's not ordinary. He's unlimitedly powerful. And what's the difficulty from him to appear in a womb? He's everywhere at all times anyway. He's already everywhere. So what is the problem with him appearing from the womb? Now this particular class is going to talk this kind of philosophy. Who is Krishna? Or giving us a glimpse of how powerful he is. Because in Krishna's pastimes, again, these prayers are preparing us to deal, they're a prescription for transcendence, and they're going to prepare us for dealing with Krishna's pastimes. Putting us in the right mind to hear about Krishna, to chant about Krishna, to remember Krishna. Because we can do things as we tend to do them, mechanically and superficially, without consciousness, practically speaking. We do it unconsciously. But something different is required if we want this deep transformation. A different thing is to do things consciously, but not only consciously, but with devotion. So we have to, the prayers necessarily open with the demigods, explaining something about Krishna's power. And then in the second class, a different mood appears. But first we should hear about Krishna's power. Now the first verse of these prayers is a very, very interesting one. It's long, and I won't go through the verses one by one here. But this one I'll just go through so we get an understanding of who we're speaking about. This is the first prayer, and then we'll just go to one other. I've tried to pick out one or at most two to go over. So here in this first one, the word Satya is mentioned 9 times. Satyavratam, it starts. They glorify Krishna as Satyavratam. That means you always keep your vow. Your vow, your vrata, is true. It is good. If you say something, you will do it. And they're specifically speaking about that Krishna said that he was going to come when they requested him on the ocean of milk to come to this world. And there he is now, within the womb of Devaki. And they know that he's not an ordinary child. They know that he's the supreme absolute truth. But you are Satyavratam, Satyaparam, you are the supreme truth. Now each of these words we can meditate upon and think about. and understand more and more deeply about who it is we're worshiping and what it means to be Krishna conscious. And in one sense, as we shall hear, not today and not tomorrow, yes, tomorrow, Krishna willing, is that it's impossible not to be Krishna conscious, but we're unconsciously Krishna conscious because everything is Krishna, not in an impersonal way. But this comes up very, very soon. There is nothing but Him in existence. Just understand how powerful He is. Look outside, look at the nighttime sky, look through your microscope into matter, into anything, from this cloth to the piece of wood or plastic below it. It's infinitely, intricately complicated that no scientist can actually understand anything in its detail, either on the big macro way or the micro way. Not possible to understand. And we shall talk about that in a few moments. But He's the absolute truth, Trisatyam, and not temporarily, like the impersonalists will say that we're all God, but we have forgotten, or something like that. But in all three phases of time, past, present, and future, He is always in this position as the source of everything, the sustenance of everything, and the annihilation of everything. Satyasya yonam, after the annihilation, everything is within Him. Nihitam sa satyam. Excuse me just for a moment. Nihitam sa satyam. Nihitam sa satyam. Does anyone remember what that means? Gopa Vrindesh? Nihitam sa satyam. I can't say it if you remember it. He is, yes, Satyam, Nitam, yeah. He's entered into everything. Just please, for a moment, even though this is philosophy, there's only so much time we can listen to philosophy before we get sleepy and bored. But just understand that He has entered into everything. That means everything. He's in here, 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 He's in there, He's in there. Yes, and you too, Shanasanda. He's in every part of us, in every aspect of us. Krishna is actually there. He's in every atom, He's between every atom. He's so powerful. And yet, He's in the womb of Devaki. And He's going to perform these pastimes that are Naralila, that resemble so closely the activities of ordinary people, that we have to know this. That when the Supreme Absolute Truth performs these pastimes that resemble those of human beings, they are the most amazing thing. Because then we ask, why does He do this? And the answer is, yes. Why does He perform these pastimes? Raise your hand, please, if you'd like to answer. Yes.
For the pleasure of devotees.
For the pleasure of His devotees. And that's His pleasure. Paritanaya sadhanam vinasya chayaskritam. He can just annihilate the demons, practically speaking, with the movement of His idea. I can't do it now. How's my eyebrow letting me down now? Okay, I'll use two at once. Just by the movement of His eyebrows, by His thought, demon finished. But He does everything in His pastimes in such an attractive way. Such an appealing way, such a sweet way, that it increases the ecstatic relationship with his devotees and increases their ecstasy, and that is his pleasure. So when we read these pastimes, we think we know these pastimes, but usually that means, and he always wins too. He never loses. So we think, well, what's the use of reading this? We know who's going to win. Just watch the way he does things. So you just pays special attention to how Krishna acts in everything he does, from the way he dresses to the way he plays his flute, even the way his external energy works. It's so amazing, Achintya Shakti. And what we're trying to do is awaken our relationship, our forgotten relationship with this Supreme Person. And if we do, if we can somehow face him, turn towards him, this is going to be the one thing that makes all the difference. The one thing that makes all the difference in our life. Satyasya satam, ritu satyanetram, that you're the original truth. Ritya satyanetram, the origin, sunetram, you're the origin of everything that is, every true thing that's pleasing. You are the source of that. And the source, by definition, has to have more than what emanates, that comes from the source. So this is Krishna. And then Satyatmakam, everything pertaining to you is true. So when we say true, according to the Bhagavad Gita, it also means eternal. Everything pertaining to Krishna is eternal too. And they end their prayers, Tvam, you, Sharanam, Prapanam. I take shelter of you. I surrender to you and take your shelter. This is the essence of the mood of a soul who wants to have the deepest of transformations. Has to take shelter of Krishna and give up the false sense of being independent of Krishna, which is exactly the effect of Krishna's Maya Shakti. It gives it, that's exactly what false ego causes us to do. Make us feel as if we can't be independent of Krishna because he's the absolute truth, and by definition nothing can be external to the absolute truth. But make us feel, give us that feeling that I am doing everything. Just see how wonderful I am, what I've done. And you can't convince anyone. And the people who know you best are the most difficult to please. I recently heard a Buddhist saying that I thought was very funny and true also. If you think you're enlightened, go and spend time with your family. So they're praying to Krishna again, who's in the womb. And then explaining that he's all-powerful and look at him, he's the absolute truth. And then they move to the second verse in that was the 26th. Please protect us, because who can give us more protection than the absolute truth, who's all-powerful and who's in every place at every time. And he's always like that. Past, present, future. He's the person who can actually give us protection. He is the person that we can count on. They want to tell us this because this is their realization. So then they say, they give an example, and here's where I'll start summarizing. I'll summarize 2 verses here. He compares Hare Krishna, our Prabhu. Our Prabhu is our Prabhu. But also, it's important to always be affectionate to the treasurer. It's just practical. But it's natural in this case too. So he compares, the demigods compare the material existence and also at the same time the material body to a tree. And who knows the Sanskrit word? Raise your hand for tree. Vriksha. With Bengali pronunciation or Assamese or they say it's brika, like that. And vriksha means that which must be cut down. Ultimately, it must be ultimately cut down. Everything from the material body to the... Oh, I should have asked like the children, the younger ones, not to listen to this class because it's too philosophical. And not only that, it talks about how the material world has to be cut down and you have to go out and you all have to go out and do something substantial. Are you coloring? Yeah. It's very beautiful actually. Flowers. Will you offer the flowers to Krishna? And actually, Srila Jiva Goswami explains in Bhakti Siddhava that the preaching of jnana yogis, jnanis, is how bad the material world is, and they're always trying to detach themselves from the material world. But bhakti yogis actually have a completely different relationship with the material world. They see this material world as Krishna's, not as bad, but as Krishna's, and it should be used in Krishna's service. And Prabhupada and his Guru Maharaj, the Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, were really exemplars of this. Everything used for Krishna. But because we have a tendency to want to enjoy the material world, this type of preaching is at times required. But actually our philosophy is not, is neutral according in the material world, and everything is not to see it as terrible in the kingdom of the devil, etc. But to see it as this is Krishna's energy, and how wonderful it is when Krishna's energy is used in Krishna's service. So this tree of the material world will be cut down. And we do have to understand that it is temporary, both the material, the entire material existence. If you've studied your astrophysics, you will know that the material universe is always expanding. And of course they ask, if you ask the scientists, oh, it's always expanding, what is it expanding into? If it's always expanding, it's expanding into something. But they have such clever answers for these things. It's actually, the question is not correct because our concepts of time and space are in the universe, and this is outside of the universe, so it's actually expanding into... we can't even tell you. It's very deep. That's scientific talk. It's so much easier to say, I don't know, but those 3 words, I don't know, it's actually 4 words. It's Sunday of do and do not. I don't know, it's so hard to, I also find it difficult to say, I don't know. Very difficult. But in this, always changing, shifting material existence that must ultimately get cut down. There are two birds in this tree. One is the soul and one is the super soul. So this is what they explain. And they are living there, and one is watching. That's the super soul, the Krishna bird, and the other bird is trying to eat the fruits. So it describes that there are two fruits that the tree of material existence gives. And one is the one we want, and the other is the one we don't want. But if you take the happiness, you have to take the distress. And those are the two fruits of material existence, happiness and distress. And see how much of our life is trying to get the happiness and avoid the stress. But it's like the heads and tails of a coin. You can't take the heads only. If you attach, you're taking the head, you're going to have to take the tails of the coin also. Yes? You have to. You have to. If you want the happiness of this world, you have to be ready to take all the rest as well. The distress as well. But don't worry, later Krishna will tell some stories too. That will be easier. That's philosophy parts, isn't it? It's not fun, but... So, this tree is called the tree, and it's explained in great detail about the elements of the tree in a great analogy. But the real point is that there are three things. There's the soul, the super soul, and then this material existence. And they're all Krishna, not separate from Krishna, not in an impersonalist way, all one with Krishna, but there's achintya, bade, abade, same and different from Krishna. So everything has a relationship with Krishna. I have a relationship with Krishna. The world has a relationship with Krishna, and we're asleep to that. So then they go on and explain out, like this first section of 4 verses, this is basically a sambandha gyan of the relationship between ourselves and everything to Krishna. So then they explain in the 28th verse, Tvam eka ekasya, here it is right over here. Tvam eka, oh yes, why don't we put on the one that has the... Let's see if we actually get the verse up there so you can see it. Now here's a waiting time, a pause time. Now, what were you doing during this time? Where did your mind go? Very interesting question. I find it interesting. Because there's a whole... 15, 20 seconds, but the mind doesn't stop. It goes somewhere. It either thinks of Krishna or it thinks of something else, or it sort of tries to go blank, but it can't really go blank. But this is the 28th verse. And the interesting part is, and one of the things they're saying is, wherever it goes, it's going to Krishna. But we're just unconscious of it. So, Tam, O you, O Lord, Eka, who are one without a second. There's nothing but you. Eka Eva Asya Satam. You are the prasuti, the source of the cosmic manifestation, which we see. Everything that we see, it is coming from you only. And Tvam, you, because they're pointing. The baby is in the womb and they're pointing with their index finger. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, they're pointing. It's you, this little Garbha embryo. It is you, inconceivably, that is the source of everything. Everything in material existence is coming from you. And everything after annihilation, sanadinam, it's all resting in you. Tvam anugrahas. And you are the one who's maintaining it as well. And there he is, this most beautiful child, not yet born. But he's so all attractively beautiful too. And he has such a way of dealing with his devotees that everyone or no one can avoid being attracted to him, practically speaking. But we don't see him. He is everywhere. Maya Javani Katscharam. He is everywhere, but we don't see him anywhere because from Maya, because by your Maya, Samvitachetisatvam, those whose intelligences are covered, they, Prashanti Nana, and all these existences, they cannot see you anywhere. But na vipastito ye, but this is not the vision of learned people, truly learned people. Those who are learned, they see naturally what those who are ignorant cannot see. So therefore, we should become learned. Not scholarly learned in the sense of it's 100% required to know the Shastra and to know the Sanskrit and to know your nuclear physics and your astrophysics and your particle physics and etc. That's not what we mean by learning. Those things can be used in Krishna's service, but one who has come to the conclusion of Shastra and who has developed devotion for this absolute truth, for this little boy, this little beautiful boy named Krishna. Those who have developed devotion for him are really learned. The greatest of scholars of his time was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, pointed out his guru, who he should take initiation from, as Gorkashore Das Babaji Maharaj, who couldn't even write his name. He couldn't even write his name. Such a village boy. But he was unlimitedly deep in bhakti and could teach the entire world. He was the Parama teacher, most learned. Because he had this vision. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochana. He had this vision. And this may sound funny to all of you at this point, but we are supposed to develop that kind of vision. Each and every one of us. That is what Prabhupada wanted us to develop. That is why he brought Radha Ballabha. That is why he brought Sisi Gonatai. And that is why he brought Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra Devi. That's what Mahaprabhu wanted. That's why Krishna comes. He wants to perform these pastimes that will give us something to fill our consciousness with, and this will come out more in the next classes. That will give us the depth of vision, the learning, to actually see reality as it is. Of course we can't see all of reality, that's Krishna can only do that, but we'll be able to really see accurately. And then, go to the next slide because that's Prabhupada's translation. The efficient, so again this is philosophy. This part of me really wants to apologize to everyone, but this is what the demigods spoke about. What can I do? I personally like philosophy, but sometimes it makes people go to sleep. Oh, another Bhagavatam class that I already heard so many times. It's like, I already know this, but do we know it really? Would Would I be sleepy if I was really seeing? If I really knew it? Or would my consciousness be awake with spiritual vision? So the efficient cause of the material world, manifested with its many varieties as the original tree, is you, O Lord. You are also the maintainer of this material world. This is Prabhupada's translation. And after annihilation, you are the one in whom everything is conserved. You have to press the little enter button, perhaps, or the space bar. I'm not sure what I did it. Those who are covered by your external energy, they cannot see you. They cannot see you behind the material manifestation because they only see the manifestation. They only see the externals. Just like we used to do these puppet shows, and we'd put our hands in the puppets, and you get so absorbed in the puppet show that you don't see that, oh yes, it's just Jagatrini Mataji with her hands in there, or myself with it like that. We forget who's behind it. Not us, of course, but the idea is that we forget what's really there. So, this is not the vision of learned devotees. They see reality as it is. Okay, then next, this is the 29th verse. You are in full knowledge. Oh, and then we'll go to it. You are in full knowledge, and you incarnate to bring, this is my summary of the 29th verse. This isn't the verse itself because I didn't want to go into only details. You are in full knowledge and you incarnate to bring all good fortune. All your incarnations are transcendental to material existence. So Krishna comes to this world. He's everything, but yet he personally comes also to bring all good fortune. So he brings good fortune by protecting the devotees, but also, especially in Krishna Lila, he brings good fortune by performing his pastimes. Now I'm going to ask you a question to see if you are paying attention. I'm not going to even ask you, Park, even though you're going to raise your hand, because I know you weren't paying attention. How does his performing pastimes bring good fortune? He comes. How does incarnations bring good fortune? Gopal, do you know? Remember those 3 hard words to say?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good one to remember. Do you know, Mr. Krishna? How do his pastimes, his coming, his incarnation, and performing pastimes bring good fortune? Okay, we'll open it up to the, yes.
Because they attract us to his lotus feet.
They attract us. If we are a little fortunate, they will attract us. Except in Vrindavan. Because even if we're not fortunate, if we go to Vrindavan or Mayapur, the land itself, or if we walked into Melbourne Mahaprasad Mandir, you must become attracted. And we'll talk about this later. Because there's a sweetness. There is a sweetness that's of a different frequency, more or less. Yeah, that's the best word for it. I personally think of it as like there's a fragrance that's just different, that touches something in the heart that we've been longing to be touched and that we're looking to be touched, and it touches it. And we may not get the full experience, but we get enough to know that there's so much more here. There is the substance here. There is the substance. This is the nourishment for the soul. for me, the person, it's something there that nourishes me, not just the externals of me. What are the externals of me that I'm thinking of as I say this? The mind, body, intelligence, etc. But me, the person. There's one, in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, there used to be a painting of an old lady who was, Avinash, have you seen this? Have you seen this painting? There was a bird cage. Do you have a bird at home?
No.
Do you have fish at home?
No.
Why? Do you have plants at home?
Yeah.
What kind of plants?
Tulsi.
Tulsi? Do you water Tulsi?
Yeah.
Every day? And do you circumambulate every day?
Yes.
Do you pray every day?
Yes.
How wonderful. How fortunate. I won't ask you what you pray for. Because that's very, very private. But it's so important because we have to desire in this world. And unless we desire on the spiritual level, well, our consciousness will be filled with desires on the material level. We have it's the nature of being alive that causes us to desire. The soul's nature is to desire. And this is really the challenge of life and what sadhana bhakti is. And it continues all the way to prema bhakti. To increase one's desire. To increase to increase one's desire. And if we're not increasing our desire spiritually, you know, what do they call them here?
Balance.
Teeter-totters or seesaws? Okay. Seesaws. That's American. That's what we also used to call them. Seesaws. If the weight goes on this side, then this side must go up. And if you don't put weight on this side, then this side's weight. So we really, this is the issue. This is the issue. And here's the first step that in the prescription for transcendence that the demigods are giving us. That you have to know who you're dealing with here. You're dealing with Krishna. You're dealing with the absolute truth. You're dealing with He who is everything and everywhere, and yet a person, and yet He becomes and performs pastimes to attract your mind. And we'll talk about this more later. Now, how long have I been going on for? Okay, you've all been sitting here so patiently, despite the heat and the crowds. Now, is there 29, I think 26, 27, 28, 29, that according to my calculation, since you concluded there were 4 numbers between 26 and 29, we've reached the end of this class. And at the end of this portion is talking about incarnations, and this is the issue because Krishna, and the word incarnation literally means in flesh. It's a Christian word because they have a concept of Lord Jesus that God came and took on a human flesh. So they call that the incarnation, but it's not actually a word that accurately describes. It's the word we use because there's no English word for avatar, one who descends. Krishna descends. These incarnations descend. Or another way to look at it is they allow us to see them. Their eternal presence, if we so desire. Now, there's a whole nother part of this, but open all the doors and windows, but you're ready? Oh yeah, everyone stand up. Yes, thank you. I forgot about that part. Yeah, open the windows and stand up. But I'm not going to let you escape unless you really have to. If you have to escape, you can do it. But I want you to do is talk to each other. Because that's what you're going to do if you walk outside anyway. But talk about, if you can stay in here and find 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people to talk about, and I want you to talk about something that's very strange. I want you to divide yourself, just wait a second, just wait 1 second. And divide it, or take 4 people. Divide yourself into 4 people. If you can go outside and do this too, or inside. And 2 of the people, you have 10 minutes. For 5 minutes, 2 of the people should say, "Nah, I don't believe that Krishna is the absolute truth," and give you reasons. And then the other 2 have to say, no, this is why he's the absolute truth. And then you have to, and then after 5 minutes you have to change side. You have to take the negative side. Okay, I'll tell you 5 minutes. If you want to go outside, you better wear a coat, because it could be a little cold. So you got the assignment, 4 people, or 6 people, or whatever, and 2 and half take the against side, and half take the positive side, and then after 5 minutes, and I'll tell you the 5 minutes switch. Go! See, here's a time where we've given you a way to bring out all your doubts. Now, anyone like to put forward one of those arguments? Why I couldn't?
Close it. Lock it.
Raise your hand. No, of course, it's not that you actually believe these things, but everyone, because we've been not the kids yet. Okay, go ahead. You're not a kid. You're a.
There
Get
has
said.
to be a source that controls the universe, otherwise it will just collapse and back bang.
Yeah, well, that's on the good guy's side. That's those who have knowledge. But anyone like to take the side for a moment, an anti-side, like Prabhupada used to have them do it. Abhishek, you're good at this, aren't you? We should have you take the. No, you could do both sides. Okay, give us a reason on the other side. No, you can't quote Shastra to prove that Shastra isn't legitimate. No, just the idea of the absolute truth. You wanted to put out that Lord Shiva Purana says that Lord Shiva is the absolute truth. Well, we have, yes? Am I correct? Okay. So, there's so many things, but the easiest way, we look at the Bhagavatam, which is Pramanam Amalam, which is the highest source of evidence, and Lord Shiva is in his prayers. Just read it. In the 8th canto, anyway. He's recognized. The demigods pray to him as the absolute truth, interestingly enough, before he drinks the ocean of, or appearing to the absolute truth as the absolute truth. But he doesn't accept it, so he prays to Lord Vishnu. But there's 3 types of Puranas. These are the simple answers that Srila Jiva Goswami gives in Tattva Sandarbha, that there are 3 kinds of Puranas. Some are meant for those in Sattva Gun, some of those are meant for those in Rajagun, and some are meant for those in Tamagun. Because the Vedic culture is so, it's so amazing that everyone's included. The Varnashrama culture, everyone is included, and everyone is, if they can take a step forward, higher in their consciousness, that's considered successful life. So, but yet there is a hierarchy, a gradation of shastras still. So Srila Jiva Goswami explains this. Have you read Tattva Sandarbha? No wonder you have this question. But it explains that, it describes that quoting Shastra shows that there are the 6 Puranas in the mode of goodness, 6 Puranas in the mode of passion, and 6 that are tamasic. And the ones that are higher in the mode of goodness, they have more weight as evidence than the ones that are in the mode of ignorance. Just like a child in the first grade, he learns 1 and 1 is 2. Now, certainly it's true, but then when he hears 1x plus 3y to the 5th exponential of something. He says, no, that can't be like that. But there's higher math and lower math too. Okay, we won't go back and forth too much, but that's the simple answer to that. There are different shastras that say different things, but one has to, Vedas chasavara hameva vidyo, that by the Vedas I am to be known. Krishna says, regardless of the weight. Okay, next. Yes.
So one person in our group said that Krishna can't be Supreme Personality of Godhead because when Jarasandhra came for the 18th time, Krishna ran away. So actually Jarasandhra must be more supreme than Krishna.
Then how come Bhima ripped him in half? That's half an argument only. On Krishna's advice, no less. So Krishna had a different reason for running away. What was that reason?
Which couldn't?
No, that was incidental. What was the reason? Rukmini. Because Rukmini had written him a letter saying, you please come and kidnap me. He had defeated him 17 times. And even if you do the math on the percentages of this, and then he leaves, that doesn't mean that he could, and he defeated him without the help of any armies or anything like that. That's not a very strong argument, but it's the argument a devotee who's playing likes to give. Okay, next. Yes.
Many, even in past history, many invaders have broken into the temples, destroyed the deities, and
They think they have destroyed the deities, but they're not destroying God. This is Krishna's mercy that he comes in that form. That's a very Islamic argument from Aurangzeb. He must be from Delhi or something like that. They thought they were destroying. But look at what look at how he describes himself. He's everywhere, in everything, fully. He's also in the deity, but when the deity, which is the material energy, the Lord in the form of the material energy that he transforms into, you could say the spiritual energy, spiritualizes the material energy and has the potency of the spiritual energy, but he doesn't mean he's destroyed. Now, to bring another example to show how the basic thing is the deity can't be spiritual. That's the basic argument, yes? Yes?
Krishna could protect himself.
But he's still there, right? And how many more temples are there now? And, yeah. In Kali Yuga, he comes in the form of the holy names. Now, the point that I wanted to make here is that, what was your answer to that in your group? A whole group of Aurangzebs, okay. Now I understand everything. There's one man who once walked into, when the temple was just opening the Bhaktivedanta manor, one representative of the local council was examining, what the different areas were being used for, and he had his clipboard and he was taking notes, and he was going in, and he said, "What's this room going to be used for?" And he said, "Oh, that's the temple room." And he said, "Okay, I have to examine it." So they said, "Could you take off your shoes?" And he said, "Okay, I'll take off my shoes." So he went in, and then he stood in front of the deities, and he came out after 5 minutes and said, "I never expected it would be like this." So, excuse me, you can't move things around so much. If you want to move things around, you can sit over there and move them around, and that's fine. Because these things here, so give it to me for a second then. See? You understand what I mean? When you walk into the deity room, the temple, is the atmosphere the same as walking into a mall? What do you think? Huh? It's completely different, or walking into any other place. So because everyone, you know what, I heard Prabhupada once say that everyone knows that the deity is made out of stone or marble or something like that. And to say that the deity is made out of stone, it conflicts with our sentiment to some degree, but it's true. And that's not an offense. But Prabhupada said, but to say that the deity is only marble, that is an offense. Because he has such a potency. When you stand in front of Radha, you've seen them. How many years have you been standing in front of Radha now? Now, could you look at a tree for every day for 11 years, not get bored? It's not possible. So there's a special potency, and that potency is Krishna. So the deity, out of his mercy, the stone, Krishna manifests himself in that stone. And then it's stone still, but it's so much more than stone too. It's Krishna. So the stone part, a stronger army can come in and crush the stone, and they could be thinking, I've crushed your God. But it's far from accurate. The deity is a facility, spiritual technology given to us for our benefit, so that we who can't see God, who are covered by illusion, and Prabhupada will speak about this in one of his purports, we can get the benefit of being in God's association through his material manifestation. Anyway, that's how I would answer that one. Anyone else? Yes?
Even if there's a supreme controller, why do you say there's only one controller? Why not many controllers?
Well, to say that there's many controllers means that there's no God, basically. And where did the potency of those many controllers, where did that come from? Who made them controllers?
Well, who made Krishna a controller?
Well, that's the definition of God, that he's Ishvara Paramakasi. He has no, that is the definition of God. That is the definition of the Param Satyam, that he's always existing as the Supreme Lord. So in the definition is what he is. But when you have many controllers, many devatas, then that implies that there's someone investing them with that power. Just like there's so many ministers, but there has to be a supreme head of the government. Yes or no? What do you think? Who gives the Secretary of Agriculture his power? There's so many secretaries in the government, but there's always a Prime Minister. Prime means number one, who has the power to choose who he wants.
So why can't there be many people who automatically had that power, just as Krishna?
By definition, one name of God is Asama Urdha, no one is equal to him and no one is better than him. That's what God means. So how can there be many people that no one is equal to and no one is better than? Because they'd have a big wrestling match to find out who's actually the Supreme. See, the people who think about there are many gods, they don't believe in any of them actually. They say that ultimately the impersonal is the supreme, and the impersonal manifests in so many ways like that. That's what they believe. Yes or no? They're always impersonalists. So then we ask what do we ask the impersonalists? Well, how could something that has no qualities, that is nirguna, that has no qualities, manifest qualities? Because if it has the ability to manifest qualities, then it has qualities. At least it has that quality. And as long as you establish it as one quality, why wouldn't it have more than one quality? Any other? Yes, our Prabhu.
So it's hard for me to believe that everything is coming just from one person.
Yes.
Everything we see.
Yes, that is what God means. Now, so you say it's hard to believe that, and he has inconceivable power. That's what he means. And especially he's in the womb. Just helpless, apparently. So the fact that it's hard to believe that for you doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, is it hard to believe how a computer works? If you were 50 years ago, you wouldn't have believed it. Or that everyone would be walking around with mobile phones. You wouldn't have believed it. So the fact that we don't believe something, it's not strong evidence. But if you know someone who is very, very, very deep, and actually, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he answers one of these type of questions by saying, the proof of the existence, the transcendental existence of the Supreme Lord, is that those who know him, his devotees, they have such amazing qualities that can't come from matter. The proof that the Supreme Lord is spiritual, not of the material world, is, or a proof, is the devotees who have prayed for him, who have loved him, because they manifest, and the three qualities that he mentions are tolerance, humility, and they speak so sweetly. To such a degree that you can understand that they are not of this world. Because that means they don't have a false ego. Because when you have a false ego, all you can do is make believe you're humble. When you have a false ego, all you can do is make believe you're tolerant. And when you have a false ego, you can speak sweetly. Unless you get up on the wrong side of the bed, as they say. But in touch with transcendence means something very different. It means you're there. And the great sadhus are the example of that. That's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. Isn't someone going to bring up a science argument? Thank you.
I don't know why we are talking about Krishna, it's all nature. And nature is
Yes, nature, but whose nature? Nature means energy, prakriti in Sanskrit, energy. But as soon as you talk about energy, you're talking about, that means implies there's a source of that energy.
Well, in that argument...
Otherwise you say the energy has always been there and it's eternal, but where do we ever see that? And the scientists don't accept that the universe is eternal. They don't accept this anymore. They used to accept it. That was their answer to theism, that the universe has always been there, it's eternal. But then, more recently, last 40 years, and especially in the last 20 years, the scientific theory is Bode Guth Verlinking, which says that something that's expanding can't be eternal in the past. And it's an obvious point. You don't need to be a scientist to figure out if it's bigger bigger tomorrow than it is today. That means it was smaller yesterday than it is today. So if you trace that back to the past, if it's always getting smaller, 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 sometime it had to be, it had to have a beginning. So where's the beginning?
Big Bang.
What does that mean? Who set off the explosion? They don't. Scientists don't know what the Big Bang is.
We are still researching. So
Yes. Then come back when you finish your research. I will believe you. But what? Because your theories change all the time. That's true, yes. They're always changing. And you can't be a good scientist unless you defeat someone else's scientific theory. And then you think about it, that, and it's really, so much of the scientific theory is really just meant to create atheism, a basis for atheism and disprove theism. So if they've traced it back through mathematics mostly, so that they say that the universe had a beginning. So as soon as you say the universe had a beginning, it can't be eternal in the past, then you have a problem if you're an atheistic scientist, because as soon as you start with a Big Bang, then where did it come from? Where did the ingredients come from? Who set it off, etc., like that. So their answer is something called the multiverse. Have you heard of multiverses? So multiverses, they say that there are infinite number of universes, and just this one happened to have the kind of order that it had, that something that order appeared. But the scientific theory doesn't allow that either. Actually, this Borde-Guth-Lincoln theory, because it just pushes the question back even further, one step further. Then where did the multiverses come from? Well, they've been always existing. Well, here we go with the same point. So they just imagine that there is one little person. Where is a big scientist living in California, Stanford University? Okay, so there's this one little person in one little university, in one little city, in one little country, in one little world, in this huge, huge, huge universe where there's countless planets. And they're talking about multiverses. So there's an infinite number of universes. And here's this one little guy sitting in his office trying to understand this thing that is, the substance of reality that is billions and countless billions to the billions to the billions to the billions times far away from him in his little office. And you're going to believe him just because he says it? It's science, but are you going to believe it when it changes? Because he says it. How much faith do you need? And do you think the same theory will be thought of as true in 100 years? There's no theory practically that stood up even 50 years. So how much faith you need? And that's the brainwashing. So it's not science versus religion. Science means reason and religion means faith. It's faith versus faith, you could say, or Prabhupada would prefer to say it's science versus science, a different technology. And our philosophy is that the subtlety of your consciousness, changes what you perceive. So a white ant or a termite, when he sees a piece of wood, he sees it as food. When a carpenter sees a piece of wood, he sees it as a table. When a scientist sees it, he sees it as its cells. When a quantum physicist sees it, what does he see it as?
Waves.
Waves? Well, then, no, it's particles. No, it's waves, particles, waves, particles. So according to your consciousness, you perceive reality differently. So that's our philosophy. That if you make your consciousness so subtle by bringing it at least to the mode of goodness, therefore the four rules, to make the consciousness more subtle, to make it more subtle, then your perception of reality is naturally going to change. And then, by bringing it even to the subtlety of goodness, then you'll perceive you're not your body. That's our philosophy. And then you add bhakti to it. You add bhakti to it, and then you perceive Krishna, if you have prema bhakti. But I wanted to show one little video about what science is going to tell you. They promise. The promise is we will reveal everything to the new priests, the new priestly order. But the first one on
the universe.
yeah. Now this is what scientists is. The conclusion is the part that really interested me. You have to see it a few times to actually understand what they're saying, and you have to learn the terminology a little bit. But
the known universe is about 93 billion light years in diameter.
I think we're going to need some amplification. You have to start it again.
And yet physicists say the whole thing came out of nothingness.
You can be able to amplify it? Hey, hi, Riva. Get this to your father. Oh, okay. Wrong way. Okay.
The known universe is about 93 billion light years in diameter, and is filled with 10 to the 54th kilograms of stuff. And yet physicists say the whole thing came out of nothingness during a single Big Bang nearly 14 billion years ago. How this happened is perhaps the most fundamental question that science can tackle. How exactly do you get something? It all starts with entropy, which is just a fancy way to talk about disorder. Nothing disordered as, well, nothing. You can mix it up, rearrange it all you want, and you still have nothing. Something, on the other hand, is orderly. You can't scramble up an atom and still have an atom. So nothing has higher entropy than something, and entropy, on the whole, never decreases. So it seems impossible that nothing could ever turn into something. But there may be a loophole. One form of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says that a system can't ever have precisely zero energy.
So that means there's always something.
Because energy and mass are one and the same, this means that nothingness isn't quite as empty as you might think. If you somehow removed everything from the universe, you'd still find particles popping in and out of existence, caused by nothing but the fundamental randomness inherent in quantum mechanics. But how do you get from random particles here and there to an entire universe spontaneously forming out of nothing, and lasting for billions of years? The other half of the uncertainty principle says that physical objects can trade time for energy, and vice versa. For instance, something can pop into existence with a lot of energy if it only lasts a short time, or it can last a long time if it has very little energy. And physicists now believe the universe has as close to zero total energy as you can get. Why? Gravity. Gravity is the only force that always attracts, and that, counterintuitively, means it has negative energy. It counteracts the positive energy of the expanding universe. With its total energy near zero, uncertainty allows the universe to exist for potentially a very long time. But it doesn't explain how it grew from a tiny quantum sprout to be so mind-bendingly huge. For that you need inflation, which cosmologists think drove the early expansion of the universe. Observations of distant galaxies and cosmic background radiation suggest inflation was real, but what caused it is still a mystery. In the end, regardless of how the universe got to be so big, the laws of physics suggest that all of its energy, and hence all of its stuff, may add up to zero. So taken as a whole, the universe is just a strange form of nothing. Seen this way, the question of how you get from nothing to something doesn't make any sense. Something and nothing may well be the same thing.
That's science. Something equal nothing. But just make sure our paychecks are nothing. I mean, are something instead of nothing. That's science talk. Something equal nothing. Nothing equals something. What do you think about that? That's scientific jargon. They can prove that something equal nothing, and nothing equals something. But what do they actually give you for that? What is the actual fruit of this great grand speculation? Now, all those who are 6 years old and under, come over here. Not you, you're much older than that. You're at least 15. Come here, all the ones who are below 6 years old, come over here. Come. Because I don't want you to watch this. Because when I was young, okay, I have an idea. Where's your mother? Okay. Could you have, I don't want the young ones to watch this, okay? Because, I'll tell you why, because there's something to do with a nuclear explosion. And when I was young, great fun, huh? Just like a cricket match, huh? All mothers have their young children not watch this. Because when I was young, on television, there was a nuclear explosion. They showed it, not a real, but they showed an animation of what would happen if a nuclear bomb hit New York City. And I didn't sleep for a week after that. So I remember that. And, but the difference between what science promises and all their word juggling, they come up with something and nothing, but they've actually managed to fill the world with terror. So this is the fruit. So there's this one person by the name of Robert Oppenheimer, who you probably never heard of. But he was a scientist in the 1940s. He's passed away now. And he was the father of what was called the Manhattan Project, which was the first experimental setting off of an atomic bomb. And so there's a little bit of interview with him. We're showing something about him in the beginning of this. It's a short little video. And then just before it, they set it off. And then there's the part that you can all close your eyes on, when they show the experiment going off successfully, and it's frightening. And then it shows an interview with him 20 years later with the same person. And what his thoughts were. So there's what science promises. We're going to know everything. We will find truth, and we will reveal truth to you. And then there's the reality. Okay. Everyone who wants to can close their eyes, which will immediately have all the kids open their eyes. Gopal, you should be one who keeps your eyes closed. And okay. But we'll need the, okay.
I have been asked whether in the years to come it will be possible to kill 40 million American people in the 20 largest American towns by the use of atomic bombs in a single night. I am afraid that the answer to that question is yes.
Finally, after 3 years' work, the atomic experts were ready to test their first bomb. In the control shack was Dr. J.R. Oppenheimer.
The automatic controls got it now. Rob, this time the stakes are really high.
It's going to work all right, Robert, and I'm sure we'll never be sorry for it.
In 40 seconds, we'll know.
Okay, you can all close your eyes.
30 seconds.
20 years later.
It would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people
Okay. He said he was very, because in the beginning part they asked, I'm sure, which was an actual video, not a video, a film of when they were doing the experiment. He said, don't worry, I'm sure that you won't regret this. And then ultimately he did regret it, because it was such a destructive force unleashed. Now where does that energy come from? That's one question. But such a destructive force, so he said when it went off, he's talking about the experiment, that there was silence. Some people cried, some people was happy that it was successful, but mostly there was silence. And he remembered the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Kalosmin Lokicaya, that time I am the destroyer of all the worlds. So he remembered that verse with a different translation, of course. But he remembered that verse, that this is a force, they're dealing with Krishna. They're Krishna's energy here. So he wasn't very happy about it. And during the interview, he was moved to tears thinking about what he was part of and what he had created. So he was very sorry about it.
Regretful.
Huh?
Regretful.
Very regretful, exactly. Exactly. So scientists, so many big theories in how the more bombs we have, the world is going to be safer for it and the more destructive. But the actual thing is that we give you sports, we give you the internet so you can, and we give you computer games so you don't have to think about the danger the world is in. We don't give you freedom from anxiety. We fearful of diseases, fearful of terrible holocausts like this, fearful of failure, financial fears and everything. So what's going to come out in these next verses is that Krishna is going to give us something beyond the fear, a shelter beyond the fear, a shelter that's real, that's satyam, that's real. Now we may think that, oh, maybe this won't happen, and we hope, certainly we hope and we pray this kind of thing we won't have to experience this kind of thing. We certainly hope and pray that. But we also have to make our consciousness refined so we understand that, yes, this is certainly horrible, but I'm not this. And if I'm only living on this level, this shelter, the level of trying to shelter this, now what's going to happen to me when my time comes to leave this world? Because it's going to happen this way or that way or this way or that way. It's the very nature of the material world. It's the pinching of the material world that's inevitable, and it's unstoppable. And we're not going to be able to find a shelter in the material world. So we don't want to make a negative class, even though this is I find it quite frightening myself, and not particularly liking horror movies and things like that. But yet, the positive part of it, of this kind of pinching, is that we really do want to feel the necessity, like the demigods felt the necessity, to turn to Krishna. There is actually a necessity that our ant-like existence doesn't allow us to see it, because we're so busy building our little tunnels and moving the grains of sand around that we forget that it's all very temporary. And the scientists are saying, don't worry about a thing. We'll replace your liver, we'll replace your heart, we'll replace your kidneys, we'll replace your, what else?
I think that
Yeah. But so this is the promises, but this is a real thing that they're giving us, and they give us. Don't worry about a thing. You know, you can go on your computer and everything will be in the cloud, and you can go on. You can have information from all over the world, and you can watch this movie and download that. Of course, no one uses torrents or anything like that, but you can do this, you can do that. You have all the illusion you want, and your team may even win. Your sports team will win, and then you have your favorite musicians and this and that, and we get so enwrapped in all this. And when your Aussie rules football team wins, you feel elated. What to speak of if India beats Pakistan in cricket? You feel we've really done it. And then if they lose, you feel miserable. And if your body is healthy, you feel happy. And if you find out that you have this problem, you feel sad. And if your car gets hit, you feel car, boom. You feel like they just hit you. And if it's just where. So Krishna very kindly wants to give us some knowledge of a shelter beyond any of this, and it's very pleasing. Just walk in front of Radha Baladev, you'll see that it's of a different substance. Just allow yourself to get involved in the holy names and japa and kirtan, to actually be there while you're chanting, to actually be present consciously while you're chanting, while you're in front of the deities. I can go into the temple, and I can go into the temple, and I've learned how to do this and like this, and I could walk out and I can't even tell you what color outfit the deities are wearing or something like that sometimes. I'm not even there, even though I'm there sometimes. And when I'm chanting, and when I'm hearing Bhagavatam class, or hearing the Bhagavatam. But if we actually see some true relevance in it and put our consciousness on it, we'll get in touch with a different realm, a realm that's a real shelter. So of course the kids, the young ones, they can't, and even the ones in their 20s, they're ambitious and doing this and that. And the ones in the 30s are so involved in their young families, and the youngest and the ones in the 40s. And then, but suddenly, when you start hitting, if you make it to 70 or 80, you start saying, any day could be my last, and then what? And we get reminders continuously, and I really didn't want to make this a negative class, about how miserable the terrible old material world is. Rather, it's such a very positive alternative to seek to experience and be in a realm that is actually brings satisfaction to me, the person, on the deepest of deepest levels. Now, do you believe that? You ask yourself. So one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, he said that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, once you've come to the temple, and he was unmarried at that time, but he had his parent. He was responsible. He was the oldest son. He said, even if you hear that your house at home is burning down, you should not go home to put out the fire. That's what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mood. You could say it's extreme, or you could say this is reality. This is the reality of life. And that exalted soul did go home, by the way, and he, just somehow by Krishna's arrangement, he was made free, just like with Narada Muni is described in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, in the sixth chapter, 6th chapter, 5th and 6th chapter, that somehow there was a misfortune that occurred. A terrible misfortune. This young boy was in a terrible situation, and he had no one to support him, no one to take care of him, and he took shelter of Krishna. Now we're moving into the realm of the second class, though. But this is really the point. There is a shelter, and the pinchings and the difficulties and the fears and the anxiety. Of course, we have to deal practically, unless we're on that level where we, even if the house is burning down, we're not going to go home. And there are devotees who just go like that. They've learned from their previous lives, like Zen Bharat was like that. He just had enough. He just decided, enough. Enough. I was Bharat Maharaj. He had the remembrance. I was Bharat Maharaj. Then I became a deer. And now I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Enough is enough. But we don't imitate. And we should never imitate. But we should understand what part of us. Reality different from illusion, the shadow different from the substance. We should have that there, and we should be humble and say, no, I'm not on that level right now, but let me in my own way move in that direction, either like this, or like this, or like even like this. This culture is something wonderful. This Shastric culture is something wonderful. That no one is condemned unless you go like this. You want to go opposite direction. So be realistic and under guidance. Either go like this, like this, like this, like this, or even like this, but go for that goal. So we'll be talking more about that. And whoops, I've done it again. Later this afternoon, and then tomorrow. But this afternoon I'm going to really try to tell some stories. And there's a few videos, none of the rest are frightening though. Did you watch that one, Hayagriva? Was it frightening? No? Okay. I guess if you play enough computer games, nothing's frightening anymore. They use those computer games in the army, in the armed forces, to make the recruits desensitive, to desensitize them from
holding a gun.
Yeah, and pointing it and then going like that. Just like when if you are there any doctors here? Mm-hmm. Other than PhD types. But you practice before you can operate on live human beings. You practice on cadavers, which means dead bodies, because you have to build you have to become, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't cut someone open or just even stick a little needle in someone. You have to practice to become unsensitive to these kind of things. Could someone say something sweet and nice so we can end? We need something sweet. So Tina, would you say you're in the mood to say something about Krishna and Vrindavan, or something sweet?
When we go outside,
yes,
we should have a look at all the trees around us.
Yes. What should we see when we look at the trees around us?
We should see the trees are the perfect example of giving. Because every part of them, their leaves, their branches, their flowers, their wood, everything they give.
For the benefit of others.
Yeah, and that's what devotees should be like.
And once you give her a microphone, we're going to have another one class going on here.
Trees know how to hear. When you go outside, have a look at the trees and also notice how they don't occupy each other's space. They have subtle intelligence. They know how to hear, and they can hear when a caterpillar...
Wait a second, I just told you that on the right here. It's already yours. No, it's true. But then again, I just took it from someone else too. So yeah, you can have it, and you can all have it too.
Okay. They can hear a caterpillar munching on their leaves.
No, okay, they can.
So you tell the rest.
I'll just tell this one. That when caterpillars on this particular type of trees, they eat the leaves, and the trees, they emanate some kind of substance, a poisonous substance that goes into their leaves so that the caterpillars won't eat it anymore. So what our clever scientists did, they took recordings of caterpillars eating leaves. And they played it to the trees with no caterpillars there. And the trees reacted to it and gave out that substance, which indicates that trees can hear. And that also indicates that trees have consciousness. And trees don't have brains. So the scientists who say that consciousness comes from brains, which the neuroscientists say that, they're wrong. Because trees can hear and they react. And they'll say, it's okay, now I'm giving.
Can I say some more?
Yes, what you say. Sorry. Sometimes I can't control myself.
So Krishna himself, he's the trees in the form of his energy, and he's within our hearts, and he's within everything. So when we go outside in between the class and lunch, instead of just getting lost in your own thinking, look around you and see something more than what you normally see. Because if we can train ourselves to become aware of what is around us as Krishna's energy, instead of just something I know all about, or it's boring, or it's irrelevant, that expands our ability to see Krishna in everything. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, and he is never lost to me. So hearing these very frightening things, and frightening realities, not just like fairy stories, but these are the things of the news that we get coming from all over the world. These threats and dangers.
Wait a second, you're supposed to give the positive.
I am. We have to increase our understanding of Krishna in every situation.
One last thing, Hagriva, pass the microphone this way. Hagriva has a very important announcement. Stand up, please. Hagriva, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Everyone, please put their hand up in the air and say, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare.
Thank you very much. So we'll see you later. Hare.